Hello everyone, welcome to Maktab. This is our physics video series on motion and this is lecture number 7. In this lecture, we are going to learn about time and simple pendulum. We all know that time is very important if we talk about life or if we are talking about physics. So in both the cases, time is the most important thing, right? So in this lecture, we will try to understand how and why time is important in physics. And afterwards, we will see what is a simple pendulum, how you can make a simple pendulum easily at your home, and what are some basic terms related to simple pendulum. So first of all, let us learn what is time. Basically, time is a moment or duration in which things occur, right? So it is basically the moment or the duration in which an event or an event is going to occur or it is already going on, right? For example, let us say a racer is running. There is a sprinter and he is running a race and he is moving from one point A to another point B. So when it start from A and when it's end from B, if we calculate the duration of this, then we will get to know what is the time. And to measure the time, we need watches and also we need clocks. But nowadays we have stopwatches and we have wristwatches also. So these are the instruments which are used to measure the time. But do you know, in the ancient time, when these watches were not developed, when the clocks were not there, how the people used to see the time? So we will learn about that. So this is the measurement of time in ancient times, right? So the people or the kings, we can say that in the ancient time there used to be kings. So they use different methods. They use different methods to measure the time. What they use is they use some natural events which repeatedly or regularly occurs after a fixed time interval, and this is how they measure time. So here are two examples to understand this topic. First one, we all know that the time from first full moon or the one full moon to the next full moon, this is the time of 1 month, right? So this is one way in which they used to measure the time, or for some smaller measurements they use one sunrise to the next sunrise, and this is the time for a day. Nowadays we know that in a day we have 24 hours, but at that time they do not know that in one day we have 24 hours, or in 1 month how many hours are there. Similarly, for some shorter time intervals, they use some simple devices. One such device is sundial, another one is a sand clock, and the another one is water clock. One by one, I will tell you all about sundial, sand clock, and water clock also. So let us see how a sundial look like. Here, this is the image of a sundial. You can see on the left, this is a device which is used to measure the time in the ancient times, right? And on the right hand side, this is a big or a huge sundial. This was made by a king, and this is located in Jaipur in India. If ever you get a chance to visit Jaipur in India, must go to this place. Now the question is how this sundial is used to measure the time. So basically in this sundial, what we use is we use the shadow. So whenever there is sun, let's say the sun is here, I'm taking example, and sun rays are falling on this end of this sundial. So this will cast a shadow, and this is already casting a shadow in this direction. See, and here it is written 3. So this is how, by the shadows, by the casting of the shadows, they come to know about the time, right? And in the similar way, this huge sundial also works. Next is the sand clock. You must have seen a sand clock, right? You must have seen it in your childhood days. You must have played with a sand clock. What is there? You can see there are two compartments. First one is this, the second one is this, and both the compartments they have sand inside. The sand is filled inside the compartments, right? So what happens in the sand clock is we just wait for the sand to get empty from one compartment. Let's say from the first compartment, the sand takes 5 minutes to get empty. So we are taking as just a normal example. It is not always possible that it will take 5 minutes only. It can take a longer time. It can take a shorter time also. So let us say that it uh, it becomes empty after 5 minutes. Then after 5 minutes, this side will be empty and this side will be filled completely, right? So then we will change the position of this sand clock, right? We will invert this sand clock. Then the two number side, it will go on the top, and the one number side, it will go in the bottom. And again, the sand will start going from second compartment to the first compartment, and again it will take 5 minutes, right? So in this way we can measure 5 minutes. So similar, these sand clocks were used in the ancient times. And similar to this sand clock, there is a water clock also. The difference is, in place of sand, they use water, and it pours down drop by drop on the other compartment, right? So this was all about the time. Let us see some units, how we can measure time. Let us see some different units. So seconds. Seconds is the standard unit which is used to measure the time. If you want your time to be in standard unit, you should use seconds. There are some bigger units also. One such unit is hour. So 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. Then there is 1 minute. We have 60 seconds in 1 minute. There are some bigger units also. These are 24 hours. So 24 hours makes 1 day. Then 30 days. 30 days makes 1 month, right? And 12 months, it make a complete year or 1 year. There are much bigger units also for measuring the time. First one is the time of a 10 years. So it is known as 1 decade. Time of 100 years. This is known as 1 century. And time of 1000 years. This is 1 millennium. So these are the different units that you can use to measure the time, or you can change these units to the other units also. So let us now learn about simple pendulum. What is a simple pendulum? How you can make a simple pendulum at your home. So here, this is the image of a simple pendulum. What do we need is, we first of all we require a rigid support. So it might be the roof of your room or any rigid support which is present. Then what do we need is, we need a thread. So this is the thread of a simple pendulum. And lastly, we need a bob. This is a metal ball, a small metal ball which is known as bob. Right. So this way you can make a simple pendulum. In this simple pendulum, you have to just apply a force from this side, and this bob, it will start moving from one side to other side, and from one side again to the other side. Right. So we will see the motion of this bob also. But first of all, let me tell you some important positions for this bob, right? So one such position is the present position. You can see where the bob is. So this position is known as mean position. This is the mean position of the bob, right? Now let us assume that if I disturb this bob, and it will go towards the left hand side and it will go till here only, right? So this is the A point and we call it as extreme position. We call it as extreme position. So this is the maximum position till where this bob will move, right? And let us say to this side also there is a B point from where this ball or this bob will go. Again this B will act as extreme position. Now let us see the motion of this bob. So you can see it is starting from A going to B and then it is coming back to A, right? Let me write the mean position at as C. Again it is moving from A to C and then to B and again back to C, right? So if we are keeping the length of this thread, if we are keeping the length of this thread constant, constant means if we are not changing the length of this thread, so every time this bob will take equal time to cover one oscillation, right? If we keep the length of the thread constant, the bob will take same time to complete one oscillation, or you can say to complete one swing, right? And the motion of this simple pendulum, it is a to and fro motion, and such motions we call them as periodic motions, right? And also oscillatory motion. So types of motion we have already discussed in the previous lecture. If you have not seen those lectures, you can see those lectures. I will give you the link in the description box for those lectures. In those lectures we have discussed about oscillatory motion, we have discussed about periodic motion also. So now let us see some important terms regarding this pendulum. So this thread, you can see the thread, here it is the thread, right? So the length of the thread is known as the length of the pendulum. So if I ask you what is the length of the pendulum, you can simply say the length of the thread is known as the length of the pendulum, right? So it is the length of the thread from the point of suspension to the center of the bob, and it is known as length of the simple pendulum or length of a pendulum. Next is oscillation. What is the meaning of oscillation? So see the motion of this bob. So it is starting from A, let's say this is A, it is going to B, and then it is going to C, then again it is coming back to B and coming back to A. So this complete motion, here it is moving from A to B to C, then to B and back to A. So this is known as one oscillation. It means you can say one complete swing of the bob of a simple pendulum is known as one oscillation, or one complete to and fro movement of the pendulum. It is not always necessary that a pendulum starts from A point only, right? It can also start from C point. So you can measure the oscillation accordingly. You just have to see that the starting point and the ending point should be same. So the starting point and the ending point should be same. So if it is taking a single swing, then it is known as one oscillation. If the bob is taking two swings, then it is two oscillations. Similarly, for three swings, we call it three oscillations. Now, next topic is, or the next term related to the pendulum is the time period. Now, what is the time period? Basically, it is the time taken by the bob to complete one oscillation. So, if you measure the time taken by the bob to complete one oscillation, this will give you the time period of the simple pendulum, right? So there is a simple relation between the length of the pendulum and the time period. Can you guess that relation between the length and the time period? If you have guessed it, you can write in the chat box. Otherwise, let us take it as a home assignment. You can make a simple pendulum at your home, change the length of the simple pendulum, and try to measure the time period of this pendulum. And after doing this experiment, you can write in the chat box what is the result of that experiment. You have to tell when you have increased the length, is the time period changed, or when you have decreased the length, was there any change in the time period? So I hope it is clear. Now the next topic is the amplitude. What do you mean by amplitude? Basically, amplitude is the distance, or you can say the maximum displacement on either side of the mean position. So in our previous examples, this was, let's say, C point, and this was the extreme point A, right? From this point till this point, this bob was going. So if you measure the distance between the mean position and the extreme position, this will give you the amplitude, right? So basically it is the displacement or the maximum displacement between the mean position on either side. All right, now let's see a sample problem and try to answer this. You have to pause the video to answer this question. If there is any problem, I am doing the solution, you can note it down. Otherwise, it is recommended that you should try it yourself first. So here the problem is there is a simple pendulum which is taking 32 seconds to complete 20 oscillations, and we are required to measure the time period of the pendulum, right? So we have a simple pendulum which is taking 32 seconds. So first of all, let us write the time taken. So time taken is, or we can say it is the total time taken. So it is total time taken. It is given that it is 32 seconds and total oscillations. So how many oscillations are there? Yeah, right. There are 20 oscillations, right? So we have to find the time period. Time period means the time taken to complete one oscillation. So we have to find time taken. Just a second. All right. Time taken to complete one oscillation. So how we can find this? We can find it simply by dividing the time by the number of oscillations. So what we have to do is we have to divide the total time divided by total oscillations. We have to divide the total time by total oscillations, and we will get the time for one oscillation. So total time is 32 seconds and total oscillations are 20. When you divide 32 by 20, you will get the answer as, we will divide both of them by 2, we get 20, and here we get 16. So the answer is 1.6 seconds. So this is the time taken by the simple pendulum to complete one oscillation, or in simple terms we call it the time period of a simple pendulum. So this is how you can solve other problems also. If there is any doubt in any question, you can write in the chat box. We will try to answer your question as soon as possible. In the next video, we are going to learn the measurement of motion, right? Thank you for watching this lecture. If you like the lecture, do hit the subscribe button and the like button, and also share this video with your friends. Thank you.